record on this computer, and we are started. So this is the quiz. It is 10 questions long, and we'll just go through them as a review from the previous week to give us a start. So anytime we do a quiz, we're going to review that quiz and then go over it, because these are the highlights that I wanted you to remember. And it's not going to be some abstract, odd fact or piece of information. These are highlights that I want you to learn and to know, and then we'll review those clear at the end of the year. I think you'll be amazed how many questions you've answered at the end of the year. So it'll be a great opportunity to see how much you have absorbed. And I will also make a study guide that's published that has the answers. So that will be coming out. So our first question is, container raised in straw bales can dry out quicker than in-ground gardens. Is that true or false?
True.
That is true. We do not have the ability to insulate the ground. The ground serves as an insulator, and that's really important. And if you've ever tested the temperature of the soil temperature is always going to be a little bit cooler than what the air temperature is. So there's a difference. And when we take the garden up and out of that soil, we've lost that insulator and that buffering. So a container, a raised bed, and a straw bale can all dry out. The smaller the container, the quicker it's going to dry out in general terms. Okay, a mixture of peat moss, topsoil, and aged manure and compost is ideal for container gardens and raised beds.
True.
False. That is
False.
We try to do a mix. You don't want to overload on compost. And I had an example of that with a new gardener that was so excited to get a raised bed, and he was going to have the best soil. He filled the entire thing full of compost and burnt up every plant he planted. So we need to add some topsoil, especially in a raised bed. You're not going to have nearly as much in a container garden, but remember, when we are doing bigger vegetables, especially, you need some topsoil. But we have mixes, we have different portions that we make, and we use them out of those components. So peat moss, so you're going to have more peat moss in a smaller container garden. So if it's more like a flower pot, you're going to have more peat moss than you are topsoil by quite a bit. When you get into bigger containers that are going to be feeding vegetables, they're going to have some more aged manure and more topsoil in it. Okay, straw is preferable over hay for bale gardens because of fewer weed seeds in general. So that's the answer there, is we want to make sure that we get a clean source of straw or a clean source of hay, so we're not accidentally bringing in a weed problem. And one of the worst ones, of course, to bring in on accident is puncture vine, or the other one that's really bad is bindweed. So sometimes we brought bindweed in on the process on accident. This fertilizer formulation is used to condition bale gardens. And we specifically talked about that from the video that came from Oklahoma State, and that is urea. It's 4600. So remember what 4600 means. It is 46% nitrogen, 0% phosphorus, 0% potassium. And 4600 is what we consider a fast release fertilizer, and meaning it allows the fertilizer to be released and available to plant materials immediately. So that's what that is. 10-10-10 is a general blooming or a general growing type fertilizer that's used fairly common in a number of different scenarios. 15-30-15 means it has double the amounts of phosphorus. This tends to be more into formulations for flower blooming. So this is more for bedding plants that are flowering and for roses and herbaceous ornamentals that bloom. The next question is bale conditioning takes 14 days. How many times should urea be applied and mixed in how many days during that time span? And it's every other day. So we are applying that urea. Remember how they showed those urea pellets were laid across the top of the bale and they were mixed in evenly, kind of like taking a salt shaker in a sense, shaking it, spreading it evenly, and then poking it and moving it in to into that bale about 3 to 4 inches every other day. Our next question fits in with this. When conditioning bale gardens, the garden should be watered every day. True or false?
True.
True. We want that to get wet. We want it to get in contact with the urea. We want that fertilizer, that nitrogen source to bind with the straw and to get warm and start to break down that center. And as that breaks down, and we have the thermometer in our example that we shoved in there to test the temperature of the bale. As that breaks down, that's when we get that humusy, composty kind of material that we can plant vegetables in, or we can plant seeds in. Okay, the next one is container garden crops should be rotated by plant families to avoid disease. True or false? That is true as well. And so as we talked about, there are certain families that have different characteristics that are very interesting. And one of them is our Solanaceous family, or the family Solanaceae. That is our tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, and eggplants. And that family, that is the nightshade family. That family has a history of building up diseases, especially soil-borne ones, if we continuous crop vegetables in that same family year after year after year. So if you raise a container garden, you should not plant tomatoes more than 2 consecutive years in that same spot. You need to plant something completely different from a different family to help break up some of that potential disease cycle. And one of the things that I suggested in class is if we use that Solanaceous family, if we grow the tomatoes or the peppers, then we want to plant something back that's completely different, such as beans or peas, the legumes. That family will add nitrogen back to the soil because tomatoes do use quite a bit of nutrients. So that's a good one to follow: the peppers, potatoes, eggplants, and tomatoes. So always move and change your families around. So it's really good. So you can have your container gardens, and maybe it's good to have 4 container gardens. Have 1 per family, and then just rotate which plant crop is in those containers. And that gives you the chance to have a rotation just like you would in the ground if you had a traditional garden. Soil mixtures and containers and raised beds should be replaced by half and amended after each year. True or false? It's always a good idea to mix up your soil or soilless mix, whatever combination you have, mix that up and allow for some new materials to come in. And then always amend it with some fertilizer, depending what is in there. If you need to, oh, thank you. If you need to add some nutrients based on your soil test. We'll talk about soil testing at a later date. To completely water a container garden, the answer is water until moisture runs out of the bottom of the container. That's one of the best rules, is we fill the entire container as much as we can until we start to see some moisture come out of the bottom. That means we have watered the entire container. That's really important with our small containers, especially hanging baskets or smaller containers that will dry out quickly, because we don't want soil pulling or peat moss mix pulling away from the sides of the container. Once we get that pulling away action from the sides, that means that the soil mix or the peat moss mix with the soil has become hydrophobic. And when you water that, the water is going to go to the top of the material and it's going to slide down. It's not going to absorb. So we want to make very sure that we keep that moisture even in a container. And the smaller the container, the more you have to check it in general terms. Always check with your finger, your index finger, to tell really how moist it is, and just keep it moderately moist at all times. And then the last one is planting vegetable crops close enough to barely cover outer leaves in the garden is a benefit because the shading effect inhibits weeds from germinating. And so when we plant, when we space our vegetable crops or our flowers the same way, if we have container flowers such as bedding plants, we want those leaves just the tips just to cover each other a little bit. And that creates the shading effect that I'm talking about, that cuts out enough light that inhibits a lot of weed seed from sprouting in your potting mix or in your soil mix, depending on what your compost. So that is our review on our quiz questions. Are there any that you have had or things that you thought of from the last class that you'd like to share? Was it terribly painful? Trying to gauge what everyone's thinking. What do you think? Was it too bad? Was it doable?
Very easy.
Okay. And that's what I want you to do, is just to review these topics, that it's something that is beneficial, that really helps you build your knowledge, and that makes it fun to learn. Because I'm not here to torture you with tests and quizzes. My idea is for you to learn from them. And I think you'll be amazed how much you pull up information-wise from everything that has come from the quiz. So if we do a 10 problem quiz, we do 19 classes, we're going to have almost 200 questions at the end of the year. Isn't that amazing? So each time you take this quiz, you've taken part of your final. So you're learning your final with each class, and it's not, oh my gosh, we're going to cram for this big test at the end. We're going to take our test with that. And I have had experience with that with professors over my years of education in the classroom, and that seems to be a very good little tactic to help people learn in chunks, because we do learn in chunks, in pieces naturally. And also, you know, it gives us the chance to check in with you if you understand a concept or not now, versus having it clear at the end. So if there's a question, we want to answer that now, and so you understand. Plus you get this great study guide at the end to put in your book. And these are all the things that we learned as our highlights for 2021. So, okay, so that is the quiz for tonight of last week. And we're going to go to our class. We've got our setup here. We got, okay, got a comment. I disagree with you on pot mix. I always use a combination of topsoil, compost, and which question is that, Julie? It's number 2 is true. A mix of peat moss, topsoil, aged manure, and compost is ideal.
Okay, you said false. Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it is true. It is true. I must add a Freudian slip here. Yes, it is true. You want to mix it up. You don't want to use all compost. Like you don't want to use all topsoil. If you used all topsoil in a hanging basket, your hanging basket would get hit by the wind and be on the ground. So I'm sorry. Sorry about the confusion on that. So yeah, if I say something and you scratch your head or say, what are you talking about? Please ask.
I always do, David.
No, that's great. I gotta have someone keep me going. So we're gonna look at morphology. And so we had some different student activities for you to do. And we're gonna first go to the video here. And we're gonna watch the video and then we're gonna do the activities and then talk about them in more length. So there's not a handout per se right now. What I will do is I will turn this into a handout and send it back to you. Does that make sense? So I had you do the little matching where you pulled up the pieces and matched them. Now we're going to do the lesson and then I will send you the screenshots with the diagrams that will have it in there. So we're going to watch photosynthesis. Some kind of abstract scientific thing. You would be dead without learning some magical scientific.
Can't hear, David.
Cannot hear.
No audio.
No audio.
Well, it's muffled.
It's garbled.
Yeah, it's garbled.
Okay. Let's go backwards. Let's check that and let's check the master volume. Let's try this.
Garbled.
It is garbled. Okay. Well, that wasn't what we were wanting to do. I apologize that garbled out.
Do we all need to mute?
Yes, let's all mute, including myself. And so we will mute everyone first. You cannot hear that either? Now, I am sorry why that didn't do that.
David,
Yes.
one thing I have found, because I've done a gazillion Zooms with kids,
Mm-hmm.
went remote last spring.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when the video does not work, what I had to do is just send the link out to my participants and have them watch it
Watch it.
independently.
Okay.
Because sometimes you might have to restart your computer or your participants might have to, and that might be the easy fix for you.
Okay. Well, we'll send you the link and you can watch it. So we'll.
One other thing I might mention, when you were going backwards, did you turn off the volume on the video?
I went to the volume and it's maxed out.
Okay.
And then I maxed out my own volume. So I am sorry. That's a bummer because that was one of the pieces that I wanted to show you tonight.
David, I do think it's not you. I think it's Zoom. I do think what you mentioned before with the extreme use of Zoom nowadays, that it's had to adapt in fairly quick order and it's not keeping up. So we experience some of these glitches and we just have to be patient with Zoom. It's still the best out there to use.
Sure.
But there are glitches and this might be part of that.
Well, I used our platform for Google Classroom this year, so we were all consistent across the state. And so we had these wonderful videos. I was like, great, I was going to show you this video. So, well, we can skip that and we can go do our student activity. How about this? This doesn't require volume. So, if we go back here, we're going to reset this. So when we talk about plant classifications, this goes back to basic biology or botany in high school, or probably middle school now because they push that further. That becomes a real challenge. So when we start looking at the different, we talk about the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom, those are the two largest that we talk about. And of course, we're going to focus on the plant kingdom. Let's do this activity where we sort it all out. So let's first go, let's look at, where do you want to start? Unmute yourself and let's start. Let's pick out one. You can either start from the bottom or you can start from the top.
Let's go from the bottom.
Okay, so we're going to go at the bottom. And actually, you have a really good idea because I like working from the bottom. And I was going to show you an example of using us as a group to do the bottom, and you work your way up. So let's see. Okay, so we're going to look at the common name. So what's the common name over here?
Butterfly milkweed.
That's right. So we're going to click on butterfly milkweed or get it going. Wow.
Then Jim. Yep.
Everyone is just really having a fit tonight, aren't we? I can't do anything right tonight. Okay, butterfly milkweed. So we have butterfly milkweed is our,
Common up there.
oh, this is, oh, it did this. So
There we go.
there we
Okay.
go. So we're going to do our common name, our butterfly milkweed. Okay,
Mhm.
next. Anyone harbor a name? Know your pieces? Because we can keep going.
Well, the
Is it-
bottom one is the scientific name.
Correct. Very good. Our scientific name uses our genus and our species. So this is our genus, which is always with the capital letter. Our species is always lowercase letter. And if you are using it, you can either put it in all caps or you can underline it. You either do one or the other. You underline or you italicize. You either underline it or you italicize. So that gives you two answers right there. So what's next? I'll pick one.
So the tuberosa would be your genus
Or
or
your
species, I mean.
species. Yes, that's your species. Okay, so if we got our species, where's our genus?
And that's the, I can't pronounce it. It's the ASIEP. Right. How is that
Asclepius.
pronounced?
Asclepius.
CPS. Okay.
So there's that.
Well, kingdom is plante.
You bet. We can always start on not on the top.
Right.
And I'm going to cheat. We had, remember you always had those little acronyms that you learned to do this. So it's always kingdom and then phylum. And then your order,
Okay.
class,
Hmm.
and then your family. So this is what we usually are talking about. We usually talk about things in the plant kingdom, right?
Mhm.
And then a lot of times we talk about family. We just talked about family, such as our tomatoes, our peppers, our eggplants. They're in the nightshade family. Their family name is Solanaceae. Solon meaning it's a solanaceous plant. So it's a sun lover. It's also known as the nightshade family. So if you've ever heard of someone thinking that a nightshade had a berry that looked like a tomato,
Mhm.
it's because it's in the same family. They have a same type of fruit. Have you ever seen a potato put together something that looks like a little tomato on the plant? It's a fleshy green. It looks like a little tomato. That is
Hello.
a seed off of potato. That is an immature fleshy seed that looks just
Interesting.
nightshade. So there's a cool little factoid, and
Mhm.
is related because they're all in the same family and they all have the same seed structure. And some species in this plant, in this family, are edible and some are inedible. Thomas Jefferson was a great botanist in his time and brought tomatoes over to Monticello to grow in his garden. He was an amateur botanist, and many of the colonists would not eat tomatoes because they swore they were poisonous. Well, colonists weren't too far off. They had an understanding that that family had some poisonous species mixed in. So they were both of them were partially right. But Thomas Jefferson was one of the first people to really make tomatoes a popular crop to raise and eat in the colonies. Did you guys know that?
No, not at all.
So that, I know it's kind of one of those weird factoids, but it shows you that there was some conventional wisdom amongst people, knowing you learn the characteristics of a family. And so we think about the Aster family. Aster, ACE, is another family that we talk about a lot. That is the sunflower family or the Aster family. And so it is a huge family that has ornamental value, but yet also has some weedy characteristics. So all of our thistles are in that family. And all of our different types of relatives to the dandelion are also in that family. So we have some good creatures and we have some not creatures floating around in that family. So we usually, when we're doing most of our stuff for Master Gardener, we're talking about a family here and talking about the characteristics of the family and knowing that in general. So that's why the publication on plant families for vegetables is so important, because you know which ones are related. Talk about Lilium, for its example, or Liliaceae is the lily family. That is the family that onions are in. So if you ever look at a bulb, a lily bulb, and think that it looks like an onion, it's because they are related. Cool things. Then we go down to our genus and then our species. We use the common name, and then this is the scientific name. So when we do display gardens, a lot of times we're going to put the scientific name and the common name together on the tags. So people learn the scientific name as well as the common name. And
David,
yes,
oh, sorry. I hate to interrupt, but class comes before order. Because remember, it's King Philip came over from Great Spain.
Oh,
Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species.
I see what you mean, Lisa. I'm glad you explained that because I saw that and I thought,
No, yeah, bring order
Yeah.
down.
yeah,
Bring order down.
Bring
There you
order down. There you
class
go.
order. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just
yeah, yeah, you're right.
And I put the mnemonic device in the chat for anybody.
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yes, it's those mnemonics that help you understand.
Thanks, Lisa. I haven't seen that since 1975.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you know, it's
but
kind of
that's
funny.
really helpful. Thank you.
And
King Philip
actually,
comes over from Spain.
if you can't remember that one, it's easy to make one yourself. The
Mhm.
greater it is, the easier it is for you to remember it.
Yeah.
So that, I apologize. I guess I'm flustered tonight. I got everything kind of totally backwards out of here. First I couldn't reset the thing and then wondered how it was going to work. So when we talk about classifications, we have the ability to do some sorting of characteristics of growing conditions, of reproduction, of color, of function. It's really great. You know, Carlos Linnaeus was the science botanist from Sweden that helped us with classifying plants or living things. And of course, that was called binomial nomenclature. Bi means two and nome means name. So two named, a two naming system. And so that's how this all got started. So that's what this has set up to be. So that's kind of the cool thing there. So we have this. And I was going to screenshot this and then send this to everyone. So you have this again. And then I was going to go to the next one. And we're going to do the flower. So any ideas here?
Uh-oh.
Petal's pretty easy.
Yeah, we can do petal, right? We can do the petal. Okay.
No.
It goes to the left.
It goes to the left. No, there, whoops.
Right here,
Okay, in the middle,
in the, yeah, in the middle. Whoa,
top middle,
right, David, to the right.
right, to the right.
Across
right.
the-
There,
Right there.
there.
Bingo.
Yay.
Yay!
Yay. Okay, so you got a petal. That's good. See if you're,
Steeple goes where it looks like a leaf at the bottom.
what's that?
Steeple
Leaf.
goes
Yes,
at
it
the
is.
bottom where it looks like a leaf.
Great.
Little leaf. There you go.
Okay, and this is a cool thing. Have you ever looked on the bottom side of an apple or a pear?
Mhm.
Sepals. The sepals are left behind an apple, on an apple or a pear. And one little cool trick that you can use to identify if it is going to be something you should eat quick is if that sepal is closed or if it's open. If the sepal is closed, it has a longer shelf life than one where the sepal has opened up.
Ah,
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
yeah. Okay.
The ovary should be that yellow thing in the middle.
Yes, ma'am. Very good. Very good.
Sepal is straight across from sepal.
Well, the ovule.
Right above sepal is where the ovary should be.
No.
Yeah. Yep, put ovary right above sepal, and then ovule goes where you had ovary.
Okay.
Receptacle goes across from sepal.
Okay. Good. Good, good.
Stamen is the bracketed part on the left.
This guy?
Stamen goes on the left, the bracketed part. Yep, nope, the main one.
Yep.
Oh, there you go.
Filament is right.
Does. Because
filament
why?
is at the
Why?
bottom.
The stamen is one piece. So the stamen is one piece. So, or we call it one thing, but what are the two pieces of it?
Filament and
Yeah.
anthem.
Yeah,
Well, the filament,
is the long skinny piece.
yes.
And then
Yep.
anthem is above that. Anther is above that.
And that is
Yes.
your male reproductive part of the flower,
And what does it produce?
pollen.
Oh,
Bingo. Very good. Awesome. So isn't this more fun than just sitting on a slide deck?
And the stigma
Oh.
is below petal.
style is the thick green part going up.
Yeah, the stigma would, yeah, right below petal. Nope, up one.
Okay. And why do we know it's the stigma?
Because it's sticky.
That's right. Tell the kids. And why do you need to have it sticky?
So the
Pollination.
pollen-
You bet. Awesome. And the style, it's right here. It's the vase. I always call it the vase when we teach with kids. This is your vase, this is the neck, and what goes down through the style. What travels?
Oh,
The pollen.
Yeah. Yep. Your pollen goes straight down and it goes into the ovary and then onto the ovules. And then we have the carpel. So. All right. So that is basic pollination. Those are the pieces. And is this a complete flower or an incomplete flower?
Complete.
Okay. And why is it complete?
It has both male and female reproductive. structure.
Awesome. You're on a roll. You're on a roll.
I have a degree in botany and biology, so.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. You guys can all speak up. I don't want to just be the talking head. Keep talking. So no, this is great because I want you to have that discussion because we have all the pieces and we have a complete flower here. And so a tomato is a complete flower. All we have to do is just shake the plant and the pollen falls down and we get it. Self-pollinating. What is a vegetable crop that has male and female flowers? What's something that we need, what vegetable crop would we need to have a pollinator, or being the wind, being a butterfly, being a bee or an ant?
I believe zucchini.
Yep, our vine crops, our vines and our zucchini, our squash, cucumbers, melons, they all need that. We see flowers that are male and we have female flowers on the plants. So we need to have that pollinating agent to move the pollen. They collect the pollen either by a creature or the wind carries that pollen, which drives our allergies crazy, and moves it to the female flower to pollinate. So that's really important because some of our landscape plants will have male flowers or female flowers, or they will be what we call a complete flower that has both male and female present. So that's excellent. So no, that is excellent. So that's one of the things that I wanted to show you. I will keep this, I will screenshot it and send it to you, but I wanted to have a discussion about the piece itself and what it does and the function, because the petals form a protection layer, as so when the reproductive parts are ready to either receive pollen or produce pollen and then drop it on itself onto the female part, the carpel, it's ready, but also the visibility of different species that might come to visit it and attract pollinators. So that's important as well. But yes, we usually have what we call Youth Science Field Day in North Platte. And what we're doing is we are dissecting a flower, for instance, and showing them under a microscope the different pieces and the function and why that pollination is important. Many of you know, we're talking always about a shortage of pollinators, especially with bee species. And that's why it is so important to have that presence of a pollinator to come in here and move that pollen around, because it impacts so many different food crops here in this state. It also impacts the quality of different types of plants in the range and pastures, and that impacts the ability of biodiversity for anyone who works with pastures and range too. So it's not just cucumbers and tomatoes, but it's also the natural flora and fauna of our landscape as well. So I want to show you this one. And then I wanted to show you this one. This is Jeopardy. Does anyone throw out a question? Let's answer it. Can you name a plant that personally requires hand pollination? So that's a really important question because we have that's an environmental problem that China's facing right now. So let's segue back before we get started. But China, because of their pollution issues, has destroyed a lot of their natural pollinators, and they are requiring humans to go out and pollinate some of their food crops now. Can you imagine that? People out there manually pollinating so they have production because their natural pollinating agents have been destroyed with some of their industrial waste, whether
David,
quality or different things like that.
David, what's
Yes.
your source on that piece of information?
That came from our entomologist, Dr. Marion Ellis, and then Dr. Judy Wu Smart. That's something that we teach a lot of our school-age children. We do need to take care of our environment and keep it clean and be mindful of our pollinating agents that are living. So not just wind and water, but we need to be thinking about those insects for the most part, that we just keep them around and why they're important. But yes, there are different crops that are required. So for instance, how many times have you had sweet cherries, for example? And whenever you look up a catalog, it says it requires a pollinator. So you buy a pollinating species to be in the right wind direction to carry the pollen off of the pollinating species onto that sweet cherry for it to produce fruit. So that's a commonly known little tactic with a variety of cherry called Stella. Stella is used to pollinate a number of different types of cherries in home orchards. So that's something close to home that we would require that pollinator. And if it was a bad enough problem, we would be manually pollinating blossoms. We see this on really high-end vegetable crops that are grown vertically in greenhouse situations, where we're manually pollinating very high-dollar crops. So, okay. Yes, more than honey. That's right, because they have a huge value. And actually, if you want to be honest, some of our best pollinators are natural bee species, and they are not communal species in a hive. They are our ground-dwelling native bees to Nebraska. They are they're very impactful. A bumblebee is a more productive pollinator than the honeybee. Did you know that? They're a higher quality, more effective pollinator than the honeybee, but the honeybee gets the attention that we talk about. We always talk about saving the bees. We think about honeybees, but we also need to be thinking about our native bee species and how we attract them, provide the food sources, the water sources, and the correct environment to keep them around, because we need to have our native bee species as well as our domesticated ones that we will raise in a hive.
David, I read recently that a quarter of our native bees are in peril or disappeared already.
Yes, that is true. That is a true statement. And it's very sad that we have those problems because we have lost them from various practices. One, our global trade. We accidentally bring diseases in with shipments that impact that. We've had a loss of habitat for our native species. So the ripping out of shelter belts and fence hedgerows and things like that impacted it. Also, monoculture agriculture, so fields and fields and fields of corn don't help matters. And also the use of pesticides, different classes of pesticides have been very harmful to that order of insects. When we talk about insects, we usually talk about orders instead of families. So that order is called Hymenoptera.
Mhm.
A lot of our insecticides or other pesticides are very harmful to that insect order. So it does impact our bee species.
David,
Just one thing, it's number of things going along.
at our Master Gardener booth at the farmer's market, every year we have someone who will, several someones who will come in with a sample of leafcutter bees. And they
Yes.
always say, what do I do to get rid of them? And we're falling all over ourselves, telling them that they're wonderful, the plants don't mind, they're good pollinators. And it's really difficult sometimes to explain to people that the relationship between the leafcutter bee and the plant is symbiotic and everything is okay. Learn to love the pretty leaves. You know, it's sometimes it's difficult.
It is, and that's one of those situations. If you have the presence of a leafcutter bee, that means you have a somewhat healthy environment that they're cutting those perfect little circles out of your rose petal, out of your rose leaves on your rose bushes, for instance. So that is a good sign. And like you said, we have the ability to teach people, and we don't want to just kill everything off, because those bees, all of our bee species do have a benefit of one thing or another, but the little leaf cutter bee is definitely a beneficial insect. So that's one of those. So I'm sorry that we digress down the rabbit hole, but there's some really important things related to that flower and the morphology of the flower and how that impacts the ability to reproduce, the impact of the pollinator, and how that changes our populations of plants and our ability to produce food, the ability to produce biodiversity in the landscape, meaning out in nature. So whether we're out on the prairie here or in the sandhills or up in the mountains, that changes, and those different bee species that are native are very important, and we must do a better job of educating the public on how to conserve those through different practices. And that's why you guys are master gardeners. Here's a way to teach the public about some things that maybe they didn't know. And it's okay to understand that there's going to be some circular holes in the plant, for instance. So I'm sorry that we digressed, but I thought this would be a great thing. Well, we had an educational moment. I wasn't going to skip it. So, okay, so let's go to the vocab game. Okay, the second half of a scientific name of a plant species. It's usually descriptive of a plant feature or in honor of someone's name or a place.
It's the specific epithet.
Bingo, that's right. It's a specific thing because we can talk about where it came from. Maybe sometimes it's a color. Maybe sometimes it is a characteristic. So, okay, so you talk about if something has a name, a scientific name, and the last name is alba. Alba is Latin for white, or we know it as white, and that comes from a priest's alb. So if you think about the covering that the priest used, this is at the time of Linnaeus as he was doing these names, naming and categorizing, but it has that. Or if you see something that says Japonica, it is from Japan. That, or if we can talk about growing habits. So if something is erecta, meaning it's standing up, or if it's reptans, we think of a reptile and it is low to the ground, or a creeping type plant. So very good. All right, let's go and do another one. A seed with only one cotyledon in the seed. Parallel vein and floral structure is multiples of 3.
Monocotyledon.
You bet, it is a monocot. Monocots, you think about grasses, you think about the corn plant, think about where you have the veins are parallel and they're not veined, they're parallels of each other. So that's one of the best things to do that. And the floral structures in threes. The first to emerge from a seed.
Cotyledon.
There you go. It is a first. As the seed emerges, we have the cotyledon that comes out. The video would have prepared us for this and led us into this. So since the video did not work for us, then we're just going to go cold and crash course you through this. So I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay, a word or term for a plant that's used in everyday language. I heard someone mouth it. Common name. Yeah. Okay. Okay, definition, a taxonomic ranking that separates or identifies plants in class. Order is above family and taxonomic ranking. We didn't talk about this term yet, but it would be fun someday to do an example for us, or maybe I'll give you an activity to do. No, it's your order. So where you have the order, remember our acronyms? So you have that. So that is that one. A subset of organisms with a family that shares similar characteristics. Genus is above it. So what is above genus?
Oh,
Species.
Now that doesn't sound right, because genus is below, is like a subset.
Yeah, genus and then
It's above
species.
It's saying a
species.
subset of the family.
Oh, within a family. I'm sorry.
That is why it's genus and not
Genus.
species.
The taxonomic ranking that separates or identifies plants in a phylum. Okay, so you got to really pay attention how we read this. The taxonomic rank that separates or identifies plants in a phylum.
That's going to be class.
Yep. Okay. The taxonomic rank that separates or identifies plants in an order. Family is above genus in taxonomic ranking.
That's going to be a family.
Okay. The highest and most inclusive taxonomic ranking of all living organisms.
That's a domain.
Yep. Big, 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 big. So
That's above kingdom.
yeah, that's above the kingdom. And so we start with domain and you go clear down narrow. Think of it like the shape of a V. At the very end, we're at the bottom, we're at this very narrow part, and we expand bigger up as we go up. A form or subclassification of a species that is slightly different, but not enough to warrant a new species.
Variety.
Yeah. So this is the difference between a Rutgers tomato versus a Jetstar tomato. There's difference, but not enough to justify the difference. Okay. Okay, a seed with two cotyledons, first leaves, net veined, because we talked about net veining, and flower parts in multiples of 4s and 5s.
Dicot.
So we always think of dicot because we talk about two seed leaves. So we think of di meaning two. So that there's your clue. Okay. A tool used to identify plants by pairing choices against each other until all choices have been exhausted and the plant species remains. A tool.
Dichotomous key.
Yes, this is the key. And you can use this with other you can do other kingdoms the same way. You can do a dichotomy, you can separate them out basically and get down to the standard poodle at the end. Definition, a name of a plant that has been bred or selected for a horticultural species.
Cultivar.
Cultivated variety. And that means that we are specifically selecting that difference. And so when we talk about a new cultivar, is meaning we are intentionally breeding a new cultivar with some distinct characteristics or traits. So with the intent of improving on color or production or disease resistance or fragrance or different, we're going after a specific trait. A set of rules that guides the naming or renaming of plant species.
Code of botanical nomenclature.
Yep, there you go. So this is the international code, and plants do get renamed. Or families have been renamed, such as the mint family used to be called used to be called Labiaceae. And that has been changed to the name Lamiaceae. And that went through the International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. One of the tricks that I learned in class in college was our professor talked about mints have lips. So like Labiaceae, mints have lips and roses have hips. So one of those little funny little ditties that Dr. Elise Leduc taught us. So Labiaceae was the mint family, and then it did get changed. The name did get changed. So,
You know, and with DNA testing, some of the genus and species have even been changed in a few species anyway.
yes, and isn't it cool, because as we advance and we start to look at, we have the ability to look at the DNA structure of plants now in a way that we had not had in the past, then we can reclassify and do some things that are pretty cool. So things, science is ongoing and science is evolving. So that's fascinating. That's part of the love of all this. Okay. Okay, so next one, a scientist focused with an understanding ecosystems as a whole.
Ecologist.
Yep, ecology. Ecologists are the study of ecology as it changes. And, that's one of the things we need to do is we need to be thinking in the terms of a system. Nothing happens in a vacuum outside of nature. So one thing impacts something else in the environment. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that you have to understand in nature, and also something we can teach master gardeners. It's the same, and you had an example with the leafcutter bee. Okay, you have the leafcutter bee cutting those circular holes in the leaves. You want to get rid of that insect, fine. But what is the consequence of getting rid of that insect? Any thoughts?
You lose a pollinator.
Pollination, yeah, you reduce pollinator. So everything has a consequence. There's going to be a reaction for every step that happens somewhere. So, okay, if my maple tree in my front yard keeps on growing and casting more shade, are my iris going to grow and thrive in the same spot year after year? No, because there's not going to be enough sun. So things are going to be ongoing. And that's what's important to learn, that as the environment changes, so does the lay of the land, as something that the ecologists are always going to be searching for. Okay, the next one, a taxonomic ranking that separates or identifies plants in a kingdom. Phylum is above order in taxonomic ranking.
Gonna be phylum.
Phylum's way up there. So anyway, so that's basically this little quiz. And that's why I wanted to show this to you so we could go through the questions. We can go through these examples and show you what we have here. Okay, this is the plant cross section of where the xylem and the phloem are working and all the pieces that are connected to it. So who wants to take the first stab on this one?
I'll do sunlight.
You bet. We can figure that out, right?
Cuticle is at the top of the example.
Yes, cuticles right here. Okay.
And then upper epidermis would be the top left there.
This one right here. Is that what you're wanting?
Mhm.
Yep. Okay. You guys tell me, I'll move it around.
Mesophyll is below the upper epidermis.
And this is a little clue. Meso means middle. So when you always think about meso or meso, always think of something that's generally in the middle. Very good.
The red piece there just below that, I think, is the xylem. I think. And the blue would be the phloem.
Yes. Because they're paired together. Now, which direction does xylem go? Does it
Up.
go down?
Phloem goes down.
Phloem goes down, xylem goes up. And the xylem is in the middle. If you do another cross section, I have a picture here I was going to show you. I have another way to look at it. And then the phloem is always going to go down. Okay. Okay, got another one?
Lower epidermis would be next.
Yep.
The blue arrow is oxygen
Yep.
that's leaving, and the
Yep.
red arrow is carbon dioxide going
Oxide.
in.
Mhm. And then we trap it. We trap that carbon dioxide comes in. We get it trapped with sunlight, and we get water vapor and a little bit of glucose, and out comes the oxygen. And then we've got the vein is left. So that this is really important for us to know where this example of all these pieces go together. And I get really adamant, or I try to teach people, especially when we're trimming trees or we're mowing the lawn, why we keep the lawnmower away so we are not cutting into all this and causing permanent damage. We call it mower blight, or you got your weed whacker too close by. And so that's one of the teaching moments and one of the benefits of having a mulch ring around the base of a tree or a woody plant, so you avoid cutting into this, because we don't want to lose that ability for water and nutrients to come from the top of the plant and goes down to the roots and stores that and also maintains the plant. When we cut that, we don't have the ability to move those resources up and down anymore. And so that
2 o'clock tomorrow at the athletic field. Grill some burgers, we'll tell stories about Jack, you and Amy are both welcome.
it is kind of a annoying thing here. So, but when we talk about that, we can have what we call avoiding mower blight. And that's an example of this. I also have a picture here of you thinking about the xylem and the phloem, and you have your xylem here in the middle, and then your phloem structures all the way around it. So I had some other examples to show you. So we had the cross section here, but now we're looking straight at it like a bird's eye view at the top of making sure, you know, we don't want to cut into that, but that's so important. So, but okay, so those are the pieces that I wanted to share with you tonight, where we had the different types of activities and the pictures of the diagrams. And I will send you a screenshot of those. I will save them as a PDF file and then send them to you so you have them and you can keep them with you. So you can add that to your book. This is also in your manual, but we will make sure that you get those pieces now so you have them and then you can refer to them later. So that's basically what we have going on for tonight. And then talking about the different pieces. And I'm glad we had the good ecological type of discussion of our other impact with the role of the pollinator and the role of plant reproduction, the role of seed production with pollination and all of that combined, because all of these things have an impact on each other. So, okay, and here's a YouTube. Lisa, do you want us to try to watch this? See if it works. You want to try it?
Sure.
Let's try it. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't, we can send it out on a video.
Yeah, I just shared it just in case.
Okay, so let's double check.
That face that is usually covered by a phone.
Okay. Can you hear it?
Some kind of abstract
Oh,
would be dead.
No, he's still
garbled.
no.
No. Can't hear it?
No, he's still garbled.
Okay. Well, I'll just send it on an email for you to watch. So
Wonderful.
I will think twice about trying to add these videos in if it's too garbled. So, but it was kind of funny because my other video last week that I shared from Oklahoma State was just fine for some reason. So it's frustrating. So I wish we had that. But any other discussion pieces about training so far? I wanted to mix it up so we had some video, we had some of those handouts, we had some of those games where you could talk and then we could discuss.
Did we eliminate orientate or growing environments?
We will go back to that. We're going to follow up the growing environment with the morphology.
Okay.
So we will just trade places with it. And this is what my classroom is set up like. So what, instead of trying to make you download all this stuff, I was going to email you guys in pieces. So you didn't have all this dumping down on you like an avalanche.
Okay.
So our fun learning games, we have some learning games here. Again, we have quizzes. And then there's some more matching. So I wanted to make sure that we covered it that way, if that makes sense. So.
It does.
And I also found a really cool diagram. How many of you remember the old models we used to have in the biology or the botany room of the or the flower or things like that? I found one that I ordered so I can have one in the future to show people the different parts. So I have a 3D model. So I was excited to do that. Go to Carolina Biology Company or Supply Company and order that for you guys to have something for me to show you instead of just a picture. But I thought the interaction would be a little bit better to start with. So. But I wanted to go through some of the morphology, why it's important, because when we apply it to the growing environment, it'll make the growing environment make a little bit more sense. Does that Is that understandable?
Yes.
It's a little counterintuitive, but if you know these nuts and bolts, we can build on it to do your growing environment. So that's how the system kind of sets itself up. And for some reason, the video didn't work, but we bounced back and we talked about the different activities for our class. This is set up more like a college class, and it had, I could grade this if I wanted to, but that's not the point. The point is for us to all put it together and work on it together. So that's a great thing for us to look at. And I will send more resources out. So, but that's where we're at tonight. This has been kind of a weird couple days with school being out for people and the roads being icky. So one thing that when I called Ladine and I told her, I said, stay home tonight because the roads may be iffy, is, you know, we are blessed to have snow cover right now and the importance. Okay, Lisa, if you want access to it, I can probably send you access to it. Would you guys like to have access to these things ahead?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, I can send this out to you ahead in one email. So you may have to be in chunks of participants, but I'll just send it to you that way, and then you can look at it and try it. So we can do that. That's fine.
It was helpful to have today's papers to go back to go over them with you.
Yes, and I like going over this stuff. Does that seem to help reinforce?
It does for me.
Me too.
I want to make sure that we have a good understanding of what we're covering. So if there's any questions now, let's ask the questions. And I want you to help guide this learning process. So that's what makes it more fun than me just, you know, droning along and telling you this is what this is. So let's have a robust discussion. That's when we have the most fun. So.
Perfect.
Now, I will ask you one thing, if you would, on your own, and I know that this is going to vary quite a bit amongst everyone, but when you're on your email that you sent me for me to send out class, please check your privacy settings and see what kind of settings it is at. So if something bounces or you're not getting an email, let me know, because some of the email went through to people and some didn't. And I think that might be a setting issue, or the email's too big and for some reason it goes into your junk folder. So we're trying to work these bugs out, and I want to work those bugs out with you so you get it and understand. So, because I think that'll help.
David, I was wondering if you had a good resource for identifying different families. I know when I took plant tax, I had like 63 memorized, but now of course I only remember a few, like the, you know, Rosaceae and Euphorbiaceae. And so I was just curious, or maybe the botanist or biologist has a good source.
I had a big publication on families. It came from Rutgers. And I'm going to go look and see if I can find it. It was something that I sent out last year to last year's Master Gardener group at one time. So let me look and see where that went. So I apologize if I'm sorting through. And if someone else has a great, if they have a great piece of information related to that,
I mean, it really helps when you're trying to ID a plant if you can get it to the family, you know?
You bet. You know, and that's what we talk about. If we can get it to the family, then we're starting to look at some common characteristics, at least as a picture of a snapshot as a family for plants. That really helps. I'm trying to think where that went.
David, I've just shared in the chat a link for the PDF. Well, it's a link for the book. If you're looking for general weeds of Nebraska,
This is awesome.
this particular resource I used for a number of years. Absolutely. And a lot of times you can find it at your public library, but it is the best out there. A lot of times it's white or green in color.
Or even red. There's a red version way back.
Yeah, way back. But this is the newer version. But if you're looking for general, like what's this thing creeping in? Is this something I want? Weeds of the Great Plains is a wonderful resource.
This is the updated version. I would really recommend, if you like doing some of this ID, this will make taxonomy make a lot of sense to you with plants that you find here in Nebraska. And it is separated, it is sorted out by family. So it's organized by family, and you get to see the family, you get to see the genus and species and how it's all kind of organized, and it's a great resource. So this is not something that you get when you pay for your fee, but this is a great resource to have above it, above and beyond, if that makes sense. And this is materials that we have, that's a really good one. I was also going to show you one, this is from California Extension on vegetable families. This is a great publication. And this gives a quick description, but it's a good one. And it gives your general characteristics and your descriptions. So it talks about alternate leaves, that they're simple, they're lobed. You know, it talks about all the different pieces. You know, it is a dicot, so it has 5 petals, and the fruit is a berry, because in that family we have fruit. Many of them are perennials, and they're grown as annuals. So this is another good one, and it's just a quick one. So, okay, did you know that the okra is in the same family as the hibiscus? It makes sense once you start seeing, if you see a okra plant in bloom with that beautiful blossom, you think, man, that looks like a hibiscus. Well, guess what? It's a relative. So that's the cool thing about this one. So I'll send this too. Would you like that as well?
Yes.
Because this is a good
Yes.
one.
Yes, please.
My love is in vegetables. I have a heavy background, but I am happy to share anything and everything. So we talk about brassicas. This makes sense. We talk about brassicas or crucifers. This is the mustard family, or you hear about mustards. This is where all these creatures are together in the same family. So if you hear about brassicas, crucifers, mustards, they're together. They're in Brassicaceae. So that's what we know them as. So things will start to make sense as it all kind of congeals. But as you know, everything's interconnected. So this is a fun one. So you will also find the goosefoot in the Nebraska Weed Guide. But did you know that it's related to the beets and your Swiss chard? So isn't that cool? You didn't think, who knows? You never know what you might learn, right? So there's some cool amaranth. There's some really not so fun things in here that in the amaranth family that we battle all the time. But we use celosia, the coxcomb, as a bedding plant. Who would have thought, right? So there's all kinds of cool things in here. Our Apiaceae family, our carrots and our parsley, coriander, fennel, and celery are in the same family as Queen Anne's lace. That's kind of a cool piece. So you have plants that have some good value to humans and not. And see, we have Lamiaceae and then Labiatae, which is the mints, which, as Dr. Leduc said, mints have lips. So that's always a good little trick to remember some of your families. So yes, picture this is a fun one. You might want to double check every so often. There are a couple inconsistencies with picture this, but it is out there. Another one was Plant Snap that people were using, where you can snap the picture on your phone, but this is good. And the reason why I always use this book is it comes back to, in our case, in the vegetable world, kind of the Bible. The Knot Handbook has been around since the 50s. It is kind of the known Bible for vegetable production, and it was referenced to make this handout. So I'm confident in the quality and the information here. So, but I wanted to share this one with you, for example. But anything else? I was also going to share the email with you on the wildlife book. Some of you came into Master Gardener training before we got the wildlife manual as part of Master Gardener training. And that's this right here. And if you hear of us talk about SNR or SNR, that is the School of Natural Resources. They are in Hardin Hall, next door to us on East Campus. And you can go and buy books that are very handy. So I was wanting to show you this book. This is the critter. This is the Wildlife Damage Management and Control book, and it will talk about the different types of wildlife species that will impact a landscape, and then how do you co-manage the landscape in accordance with state law, in accordance with any damage that comes along its way. Especially if you're out in an acreage or in a rural area, or even in a small town, even in North Platte, we get deer that walk through the center of town, for instance. So what happens when you have deer damage on a tree? What happens when you get some problems with rabbits or raccoons? And what do the tracks look like? What does the damage look like? What does the scat look like? So you're following the droppings and seeing what is that, identifying it, and then how do you manage it. But this is the book that you can order through the School of Natural Resources. So right now that link looks kind of dead, but we can get that ordered.
David,
Yes.
what happens when deer interfere with your trees is they die. I've got one on the end of my tree claim that they have rubbed against for so long it's dead. I just leave it there. If they're going to rub against it, they might as well rub against a dead one.
Yes, and we talk about that because that's actually a term called trap cropping. And already caused a lot of damage on one and killed it out, so they might as well keep on during the rut, keeping and moving and damaging that one tree and not damaging something else.
Exactly.
So we talk about that. Master gardeners will also get, it's not necessarily a horticulture question, but people don't know where to ask. So for instance, if you have bats that show up, we will get bat questions. They will call and it always gets deferred to the horticulture people. So there's, always good information related to bats, mice, rats, the voles, which look like a mouse that causes the tunnels in the yard, especially wherever you feed birds. And they will chew on the woody structures of shrubs and trees under a snowdrift. We will also tackle feral cats. We will talk about squirrel damage. How many of you have seen peeled bark that looks kind of peeled back and funny on a tree? Squirrels will mark their territory on woody species to basically say, this is my territory, back off. And so we call that squirrel graffiti. And that's that kind of information that we can help positively identify in the environment for a homeowner, and then what is correct to do. Because there are species that are protected by state law, including our songbirds that we cannot kill so legally, nor can we tell people they can kill. So, or if there's a specific hunting season or trapping season on different creatures, it's good for us to know that information. So that's where that resource came from. Terry sent me the order link. So hopefully all of you new master gardeners will be getting this book as part of your $180 that you paid into. So everyone will get a book. So. Anything else?
David, while you're here, can you show us where that, I'm kind of curious, that farm back, what is it, backyard farmer link is?
Yes, I will show you where Backyard Farmer is. Since we're here, I've got multiple. It's byf.unl.edu. There you go. It's https://byf.unl.edu, and I'll type that in the chat. You can watch this, you can watch past episodes as well as watch live. So you have options there.
David, do you know if they're doing a winter series? I thought I heard it advertised on NET or something. They were going to do that lifestyle gardening.
Yes.
But I'm not been able, when is that? I've not been able to find it.
Let's find lifestyle gardening in here, because they do lifestyle gardening in the winter.
That's what I was thinking.
I'm thinking that it should be here. You can listen to it on iTunes. You want to listen to it that way, or you can watch it on YouTube. So you can watch past episodes easily. So here's the YouTube channel, and you will see all the different videos, and you can look and check them out. Some of them are from past years, and they're great. And they've got them broken down. Here's the lifestyle gardening series. So I'm going to send this link to you on lifestyle gardening, Elaine.
Thank you.
And I'll put it in the chat. So there's your direct link to lifestyle gardening. And there's just a plethora of resources out here. And so if you want to find my tracks where I went, go to this BYF home, and you can click on Watch BYF. And so you can, there's the NET link, that's the logo, and tells you what dates, what date and time. They're Thursdays and then Saturdays. They run again on Saturdays, and then you can watch on YouTube. Click on YouTube, and they have separated specific topics out. You can upload all of them, but the playlists are past programs. There's plant disease, lifestyle gardening, vegetables and fruit and trees.
Thanks, David.
And then they've got, if you click on this arrow over on the right side, you'll get more, and it'll tell you, like under insect and pest control, there's 40 clips to watch. So you can spend a lot of time. This is a great library to watch and look at for your own education. So you can watch as much Backyard Farmer on the archives as you want for education hours. Let's look up lifestyle gardening. Trying to find where they had that. And if you go to NET Nebraska, you can look for lifestyle gardening as well. So you can go that route as well. And Backyard Farmer. But we'll have lifestyle gardening going on until April, when it starts again, and it'll go April to September.
Thank you.
Any other questions? This is kind of like open mic session. Ask away. Because I'm happy to answer. Let's, find and dig. All for getting people caught up. Show you where all the goodies are, because we have lots of goodies.
Is there still resources for the NEB guides?
There are NEB guides. And do you want me to show you where the NEB guides are found?
I know where they are, but I was just thinking about everyone else.
Okay, the NEB guides are kind of buried. I know that sounds bad. Okay.
Would it be safe to say that all NEP guides are, you don't have to go to the extension office to get a copy or anything, right? They're all posted
No,
online.
you can pull them up.
Okay.
Okay, so Nebraska Extension Publications. So the website is Extension Pubs. extensionpubs.unl.edu. And then we're going to go to Browse Publications. And then we're going to go look to Lawn and Garden. And then these are all the posted publications that we have for Lawn and Garden. And what you will see, so a lot of times there will be the front of it, you'll see it. So for instance, here's Pruning Fruit Trees. This is one that I was an author on. And it's a free resource, so you do not have to pay for it. Click it, and you can download it, and there you go. You can save it, or you can print it, and you don't have to go to the extension office. You can ask the extension office to run a copy for you, or they can print a copy for you if you don't have the ability to print. But that's one example of our NEB guide. NEB guides are 4 pages in length. And so if you see a longer publication, it's what we call an EC. An EC is an extension circular. So if you see EC, that's called an extension circular. So I might as well show you the different acronyms of craziness we have in Nebraska for our stuff. So here's the fruit tree one, written by, there's a web link, there's a web version and a PDF. I always go to the PDF. So this is Paul Reed. He is our viticulturalist. So he does the grape research in the state, and a neb guide will have a G behind it. We'll have a G and then a number. So you can tell it was written in 1997 and it was revived in 1997 and then revised again in 2016. So our goal is to always keep publications fresh. If publications are old, they go in what we call digital commons, which is basically out of circulation until they are updated and correct again, and then they will be reposted. So.
Just a note on the neb guides, there's a lot of good ones out there for food preservation and food safety. That's really good.
Yes, and I will show you that website. It's called food.unl.edu. It's a really creative web name, but it makes all the sense in the world. So for those of you who are a food preserver, who do food preservation, there's a lot of good food preservation, but there's also a lot of good basic resources on food safety. So that's really important. So when you look at all these, there's meal prep and there's Recipe Central, but also there's things on cooking with kids and produce and fitness. There's lots of videos here. You can look at the videos that they've got. So that's really good. Here are some other programs that we work with, such as Serve Safe training for our restaurant workers and food handlers. So that is there. So we have handouts and publications as well. And so it's great to have. You can also go back to you can go through this way of going through and looking for your publications. This way. And you will see the things on canning. So click on canning, for example. And then there is a bunch of different information. So fruit, tomatoes, general canning before you can, vegetables, including your soups, meat and poultry. So all that is here. And all of this is tested in a lab environment, USDA facility at Athens, Georgia. And then our educators and specialists post this information. So these recipes are safe to use if you follow the instructions to completeness. So there you go. So that's where that is. So, because I know a number of gardeners also do a lot of canning. So here's another resource that we can share that you know where that is. And if you want to know where that link is, I can email it out too. So that's not a problem. Anything else for tonight?
David, is there a general index of those, say, like if you were to go back to the lawn and garden under the pubs?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than having to go through each one, I'm just curious if there's okay, yeah, we're at this point. Is there an index for that particular area without having to go page at a time through all of that?
Not really. I hate to say that.
That's what I was thinking, but I wasn't sure. And on those that are the ECs, are those all available now, like through PDF or whatever? Because there was times when we couldn't get those. You had to pay for them, and so you couldn't print them off. Is that
correct?
Has that changed now?
Some are available, some are not.
Oh. Okay.
So here's a free resource. So for instance, planting the landscape. Here's an EC. You could buy it, you could order it through UNL Marketplace, pay $225 and you'll get it. Or you can get the PDF version. So this is one that you can download without printing. So
Some of those are the ones similar in the handbook, right?
yes, these are ones that are similar in the handbook. And it'll have your notes on the side here. You see on the page, you'll have descriptions with each figure. So there's some side notes, like footnotes.
Nice.
So
Thank you.
there are some that you can purchase or download, and then some you have to buy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's find another one, another EC. And if nothing else, here's tree selection care. And they've made that one a PDF as well. So there you go, WaterWise, tree selection and care. So lots and lots of resources here. It's important to get to this Nebraska Extension publications and then click on browse, and then you can pick your topic and then you can sort. That's the best way to go with the fewest headaches. Sometimes we've had a neb guide that we used to use and for some reason it's out of circulation. And if you can't find it, ask me and I can find it, or I can find something equivalent. The biggest thing for us is to be able to connect people to the correct information.
Mhm.
And so this is part of training just as much as talking about morphology is where do you find it? Because there's a lot of other stuff out there that you got to get to where you need to go, and where is the stuff hidden at? Sometimes publications are hard to find. So some of them are hard to find, I'll admit. Some of our search browsers sometimes get a little bit, yeah, you can search by topic or keyword. Sometimes, okay, so if we want to do that trick, let's put up pruning fruit trees. And we hope it's in here. Okay, it dropped us when we did pruning fruit trees. It did come up with it. So you can sort by keyword, but if it's a publication that's been pulled off and in Digital Commons, it will not show up. So don't get frustrated, just ask one of us at the extension office, call me, email me, and I can either find it if it's not there, or if it's tucked in somewhere else. Sometimes these get tucked in spots that are kind of difficult to find. Because the old rule, if you can't find something in 3 clicks, you usually give up.
Right.
And Julie Jacobson and I have had a good discussion about that in the past. Julie, are you still on?
Yes,
Okay. Remember how we talked, if it's too many clicks, we lose you?
yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
Mhm. I do too, because after you search about so long, you give up. It's like, it's not worth it.
Or it's kind of like that California publication. It's something that I've run into and it fits for what we need. And otherwise you may have not have known it existed.
Mhm.
So I go and I mine things up and send them out. So let you see them. Have them as well. So, anything else? This is what I really like about training, because it's learner driven. It's driven by you, the learner, what you would like to know. We've covered our topic minus the videos that were too garbled. So we are talking about other things, and you need to find these resources. So they're out there. Anything else that you can think of tonight? This has been kind of an open mic evening and showing you where some goodies are. Also, if you are interested in purchasing a Master Gardener shirt, are you beyond, does anyone want shirts beyond the ones they have? I covered this in the very, very first class before orientation where I found it. But if you want, I can share with you where you find that. So
They do have some other nice shirts besides the t-shirts.
yes, they do.
They
Let me
have
show
some
you.
long sleeve shirts and some other kinds of shirts that they're nice. They're nice looking.
Denim shirts are nice when we
Yeah.
have to do work like at the state fair.
Mhm. They're
Right.
nice polos. And it's over here under Nebraska Master Gardener. And it's under resources. And it's the apparel store. And there's men's and ladies cuts on the different types of shirts. So it's more than just a t-shirt, more than just a sweatshirt. And so I'm sharing my screen with you. Can you see these pictures? The different styles. Your initial shirt is a gray t-shirt, but you can go beyond that. You can go to polos, you can go to denims, you can go to these type of shirts. So this is black, this is long sleeve, black denim,
Nice shirt.
which is pretty cool.
Mhm.
And then there's a ladies cut to this as well. So you don't have to, and you got 3 different color choices. So you've got a lot of choices here, and you can order these independent of me. So you can order these at any time and they will come directly to you. But one thing that is important is we have chosen a color palette for the university that makes our logo stand out. And so that's why gray, or this charcoal gray, looks so nice with our logo. We can see the entire logo. Does that make any sense? So, kind of like what's the old Ford adage, you can have any color of Model T as long as it's black. I think that was the running joke years ago. So, but yeah, that's our color palette and the different types of shirts. There's golf shirts, there's polo shirts, there's long sleeves, there's sweatshirts. So you've got lots of choices here as well. And I will copy this and put this in the chat as well.
David, I also put in a resource for the invasive species in this
Yes.
could impact our plants. There's also other things, but those educational resources, there's a really good flip chart in there that you can just go through and look at.
There's also one on the native bee species that I would like to send to you as well. But yeah, this is great. The invasive species, there is also, see, it's all set for educational materials, clear up to 912, which is great because it's very age appropriate. So if you're teaching in a school program, then you can go to this and you can find things that are very beneficial. So here's packets that you can download the cards or send request a set. And then this is the trunk of goodies. So you've got lots of pieces. There's a PowerPoint. There's also Emerald Ash Borer. The Forest Service, of course, is going to have a lot of stuff on Emerald Ash Borer as well. So we have lots.
But
We have
just
so many resources.
the cards are very valuable. You know, they have a lot of information.
Mm-hmm. And this is where we download them. They're PDFs. And it's good to know because many people that we work with do not understand the role and the damage that can be done by an invasive. So our invasive doesn't have to necessarily be a plant. There are other things that are going on here. So we got, we don't live in the deep south, but wild hogs are a huge issue. For instance, we can have wild hog damage. We can talk about diseases, insects. And so here's a great one, card for the emerald ash borer. It pops up front and center right now, but it's a great one to show and then compare, for instance, what the damage looks like, the galleries that the emerald ash borer makes in the tree, and then the size of the emerald ash borer and scale. So if it's something that, if you compare a nickel to the size of an emerald ash borer, it's not very big. And so that's really good. And then there's a picture of the pupa that's coming out. So for instance, that's a great one to save as well. So we just have so much information and very good descriptors here that are available. There's also a really good publication on noxious weeds in the state. And so we will have questions about noxious weeds and the guidelines from the state on that as well.
What is that publication, David?
What's that? The noxious weeds?
Yes, yeah.
Let me go to that one. It's an NDA. Publication.
Okay.
Phragmites, of course, wonderful, all the damage it does, choking up oxygen, causing problems in the plat. So here's a descriptor. There's always the link as more. That's good, but we work with people that do not understand what these plants are in the case of a noxious weed, what it is, and why we need to control them. There are some plants that are landscape plants that are considered a noxious weed in another state. And that's why when you go and you order some things, you'll say it's not allowed to be shipped to certain states is because of their noxious laws. So here's the Nebraska Department of State. It talks about the Noxious Weed Act, and it talks about specific things on the weeds of the Great Plains. So you can order your book there. Riparian vegetation, so riparian areas. And then legal authorities and your local authorities. So sometimes you do get called by county officials on different types of weed species. I have been called by different county commissioners on things related to the Noxious Weed Control Act. And here's the biological control. So I'll send that to you. So we just have so much out there, and it's a great resource for us to be able to share with the public. And that's what we're here for. And I hope that everyone is intellectually curious to know the information that people are interested in that impacts them locally. So, and these are just great things to save on your favorites or bookmark them, or if you want to print them. Just so much great information to have around. This is the USDA site, is APHIS, and it talks about biological control of noxious weeds as well. And it will go into other programs and reporting problems like that, but it is a pretty interesting type of resource to look at nationally. So that's really great. Because we are a partner with the federal government, with the Department of Agriculture. So that's where our connections come from. Because we do talk about imports and exports, things that come accidentally into the United States or sometimes maliciously brought into the United States, or they're brought in for a specific purpose and it turned out to be a real mess. How many of you have heard of Sericea lespedeza? Was intended to be a forage, and it was a drought hardy forage. Well, it turned out that cattle did not care for it because as it grew older, it became less palatable for cattle. Then it started populating and wrecking pastures. But road departments also used Sericea lespedeza years and years ago to stabilize embankments. So when they made new grades and cuts to build roads and roadways, Sericea lespedeza was planted in the roadways to hold the ground from those new cuts stabilizing because it had such a great root system. Then we ended up with a real big mess that we have to control now. So that was something that was brought into the US. It was tested at USDA facilities years ago, and it was used for a specific purpose, and then it became a real problem. So,
What's the common name of that, David?
Sericea lespedeza. Let me, and we just call it Sericea. I'll show you. Chinese bush clover.
Oh, okay. I was just trying to remember which one it was.
Yeah, the common name is Chinese bush clover. This is a K-State resource. Lespedeza cunata, it's called Chinese bush clover. And so there's states are working together, including Kansas. It was designated a noxious weed in Kansas when I was an agent in Kansas. So we were working with ranchers and cow-calf operators to control the Sericea, because once it chokes out good beneficial plants in pastures and range and causes all kinds of problems. The cattle will not eat it, and it becomes a real control problem because the tannin level is very high in it. So it's a real problem. You can put goats out there. Goats will eat high plant material with higher tannin levels. And so that is one sustainable practice, for instance, to help control some of those higher tannin level plants that cattle will not browse. So this is kind of the fun of me being able to show you where some of these resources are, where you have them at your fingertips. And if you don't remember, just ask, because I'm more than happy to send this out. This is part of the joy of teaching and showing you where all these pieces are. Okay, this is on fruit and vegetable education with youth. This is what we call the NEP program, Nutrition Educational Program, related to low resource families. But it is great for anyone to learn on these fact sheets. These are fact sheets that we have put in with our food pantries. So when we drop food off with the food pantries, we will put in information on the on broccoli, for instance, on why it is good. So we've got an educational piece that goes in with their bags of produce that they get from us and what it is used for. And then there's information with apricots, for instance, artichokes. There are also what we call approved recipes that can be pulled off for this audience as well, which has certain nutritional guidelines, lower use of salt, lower fat, so many ingredients or less. There's some very specific guidelines on there, but very helpful to know. So these sheets are very helpful to show other people. So Anything else? We're past 9 o'clock. And I wanted to double check with everyone if we got what we needed tonight. And I will stop my screen sharing and ask if there are any other questions. Lots and lots of resources, lots of great questions that you bring up. I want you to be curious about everything we do and what we learn. So I'm really happy to share that with you, because it all builds on each other. And like we say, everything's interconnected. Nothing is in a vacuum. And we want to be able to teach the people we work with, we volunteer with, we help with, that it's all interconnected. So just like the leaf cutter bee example. So anything else? Otherwise, I will stop the recording for tonight.